We are live from Lamala Ebanyan in the Serengeti, and we're chatting rhino conservation in the greater Serengeti ecosystem. With me is Grant Burden. Grant, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having us.
And Ebenezer from Lamala, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to chat about the recent rhino relocation from South Africa to Tanzania with Grumeti Fund and various partners. Grant, thanks for joining us. Just tell us quickly why relocate rhinos back into East Africa, and what is the long-term goals of the project, and how does it go with the relocation?
Yeah, so thanks for having us, Carl. It's great to be here to chat about rhinos. And the western areas of the Serengeti ecosystem are phenomenal black rhino areas, great habitat for black rhino. Many decades ago, due to sort of a poaching scourge that the whole of East Africa suffered from, these animals were brought down to perilously low, tiny, almost single-digit satellite populations throughout East Africa. Decades down the line, we find ourselves in a situation where things have stabilized in a lot of areas that were previously inhabited by rhino due to the fact that they are phenomenal rhino habitat areas. And we're at the point now where we are able to start re-establishing those populations of the past. Rhino are extremely, they're long-lived animals with a pretty long intercalving period. So this whole process takes a lot of time, and in the long and the short of it is that despite the current global sort of threat to rhinos, we in collaboration with the Tanzanian government and everyone involved in conservation under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism, the time is right to try and re-establish some of these satellite populations to basically act as an insurance, for these animals, that the insurance doesn't only occur outside of East Africa in ex situ populations, zoos and safari parks around the world, which were, those insurance populations were established decades ago by some very forward-thinking, conservationists in the light of all the poaching that was going on back then. The time is right to start repatriating a lot of those animals, and we're fortunate to find ourselves in a situation where we can do that responsibly into certain areas previously inhabited by black rhino, and we hope to see these populations grow and thrive in the future.
Grant, so we're talking eastern black rhino, just for the guys out there, Eastern black rhino is a subspecies of black rhino. You get southern black rhino down in southern Africa. But some of these eastern black rhino during the really hard times in the 70s and 80s, they were actually taken out of the ecosystem and to safer places at the time. And now you guys are bringing back eastern black rhino into Tanzania and into the western Serengeti, which is wonderful to hear, that we can actually look after that subspecies, so that we don't get into a situation like the northern white rhino. We're really in dire straits, and with Sudan, the last male that passed away, the northern white rhino is really in dire straits at the moment. So well done for actually not getting to that point, and wonderful that we can relocate and reintroduce and supplement existing numbers with some good genes that were looked after elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. The eastern black rhino is the most critically endangered, I would say, of the three remaining black rhino subspecies. Sadly, just within the last decade, we've lost a subspecies of black rhino from West Africa. So yeah, I'd just like to say again, kudos to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism to go after a project like this and really make it happen in partnership with the Grumeti Fund to ensure that we don't find ourselves in a similar situation that we did a year or so ago when we lost the last of the northern white rhino bulls, and 5 or 6 years prior to that the extinction of an entire subspecies of eastern black rhino. It would make sense right now for people to steer clear totally of moving rhino and trying to establish little satellite populations as almost insurance populations to augment and also to further augment some already established populations. But the fact is that if we don't start thinking about that right now, it will be a case of, geez, we should have done this 10 years ago. It's too late now. They're long-lived, slow-breeding animals, and time is not on their side. So, it's really great that we were given opportunity to give effect to this project. Now, 2019. And not be thinking 10 years down the line why we didn't do what was really a strong vision back then. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's no small feat. It's not an easy thing. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of money that goes into a project like this, and it requires a complete commitment. It's obviously not just Grumeti Fund. There are a lot of other organizations and government organizations that obviously, first of all, approved it, and secondly, have supported you guys in this program. But these rhinos are not moved easily. But you've successfully managed to get 9 year, from South Africa, which is a long way away. These animals are, sensitive, and it's not easy to relocate them. So you've done a great job in successfully doing it, and we hope that they would be happy in their new kind of home where they used to be from. But just tell us, for Grumeti Fund, this is not a once-off. This is a complete commitment. You guys are in it for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very easy to get wrapped up in the in the moment when you're talking about rhino capture and translocations and releasing into an area that's ideal black rhino habitat. There's a lot of attention and focus on that whole exercise, which, like you say, comes with a fair amount of challenges. Moving, almost 1.5 ton animals with attitudes to go with it. It's a really stressful time, and both for the animals and everyone involved. But we managed to get to the point where we have now moved a few rhino from South Africa into the western Serengeti, and that indicates the start of just with the breeding nucleus that we've brought in right now, that in itself is a 30 to 40 year commitment. Some of those animals are young enough to be with us for the next 30 to 40 years. That's not to speak of all the progeny that we hope to see in the near future. So it's critical for the private sector to get involved. It has the ability to really tap into eco-philanthropic individuals out there that are really have the ability to support a project like this, because as you mentioned, it's a real big undertaking, and it doesn't come cheaply. But then to ensure that you actually have the long-term capacity and commitment to safely secure and monitor those animals for decades to come is, I'd say, of even more importance. So it's a really great synergy between the private sector and the government sector to ensure that the long-term tenure of the land, the security of the areas into which they are being reintroduced, along with sort of the financial and the logistical support and resources that are available. It all comes together nicely to ensure that we can look after these things long term, because that's where the real success lies. It's not in the short term of capture, translocation, and relocation. It's about what is going to happen to those animals 20 to 30 years from now.
Well, that's great to hear that Grumeti Fund and obviously the Tanzanian government are really committed to black rhino conservation, and we hope that this is the start of an upward trend and real stability in the area, and also kind of stability for black rhino and across Africa. Just lastly, there were many people involved. Obviously, the Tanzanian government, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism, and then every conservation project has individuals that work tirelessly to make these things possible. Just some of the experts involved and some of the guys involved in this project. Who were they? It's not an easy thing to do, and who do we have to thank for having some new rhino?
Yeah, no, I mean absolutely. It goes without saying that it's a massive team effort. I think first and foremost, you'd be remiss if you didn't really extend a huge thank you to the Ministry of Natural Resource and Tourism. The fact that they are entertaining projects like this speaks volumes for the forward thinking that is needed with the conservation of long-lived, slow-breeding species like black rhino. There's no time like the present, and unfortunately, the present is not a good place for rhino. All over Africa, they're being killed at an unprecedented rate, and to entertain a project and a translocation of this nature into an open system to be managed in a free-ranging capacity is a huge undertaking and a massive responsibility, and the full support from the Ministry of Natural Resources and all the government wildlife authorities that fall under that has been phenomenal. And this project is was a non-starter from the word go if it wasn't for all of that support. So I mean that's critical. I think the animals are really good at doing what they're doing and just surviving in the presence of a safe and secure environment where there's plentiful resources available. And that's what we have here, in the Serengeti ecosystem. It's an extremely dynamic ecosystem, extremely rich, and the safety and security afforded to these animals over the previous decade or so, as the population has come out of the depths of the poaching
extreme
epidemic
decline,
that we experienced in the 70s and 80s. The ability for these animals to survive long term, I think, is really, really good. And none of this would have been attempted or even entertained if it wasn't for that foundation that had been built. So that's a critical thing. And then then you get right down to the sort of the technicalities of actually catching a rhino, putting it in a boma, getting it ready for a 30+ hour journey in a small steel crate in an aircraft, multiple aircraft, a couple of hours in a truck to get it to where it needs to be, where they decades prior to that thrived in ideal black rhino habitat, is quite a thing. So I mean the expertise involved it's been a really phenomenal team that we've managed to put together, and the Grumeti Fund has been really fortunate to play a big part in pulling together those players to enable this translocation to happen. From the Tanzanian veterinary expertise under the Tanzania Wildlife Research Institute and Tanzania National Parks to Wiri and Tanapa, the foreign vets, South African side, from the source population through the capture and boma period down there, right through to what is often an understated role in these big translocations. There's a lot of focus on the vets and who's doing all of that, but I mean, something must be said for conservation solutions. Kester Vickery, who really went out of his way to ensure that these animals were going to be really well cared for from day one till where we stand right now with these animals. Some of them released already, some of them about to be released shortly from their facility here in the Western Serengeti. Trucks and crates and helicopters and all that sort of stuff, and there's
a big operation.
There's a lot of moving parts. So the team was phenomenal from the word go, and we also got a spare give thanks and a thought to the guys in South Africa from whence these rhino came. They do a phenomenal job protecting these eastern black rhino. It's an out-of-range population on a small, relatively speaking, a small area in the north in South Africa, and those chaps do a really good job to look after these rhino and ensure that places like the Western Serengeti and elsewhere in East Africa can actually draw upon a resource like that has been protected well, over the last 2 decades. Where numbers have built up to a point where they can now be, moved back to East Africa, which is really great.
Yeah, it's a momentous occasion, and it's a positive story, and it's wonderful for conservation in East Africa that we can actually have an ecosystem that's now stable enough to reintroduce what many people consider now a liability across Africa, and to get the black rhino back into the ecosystem, and they are flagship species, and it's wonderful to have them back in good numbers in the greater Serengeti ecosystem, and we have to really thank Grumeti Fund and the Tanzanian authorities and parks boards and Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism for the vision that they've had. First of all, securing the population that was under threat, and now a few decades later to bring them back and back to where they belong.
Yeah, I think the foundation and the the population that has increased over the last decade or so in the Serengeti has really laid a solid foundation for the Grumeti Fund to be able to augment that within the greater Serengeti ecosystem, and through, I'd say, human-induced migration, actually start to speed up that process of colonization. Black rhino are not great colonizers, so to be able to speed up that process and augment the current population within the Serengeti ecosystem by establishing this satellite population in the west has been, I think, a real good success, and I think it'll bode well for rhino conservation in the Serengeti ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, rhino is probably one of the first species that will tell you when things are not stable and when things are not going right within your ecosystem. So just the fact that the black rhino are reproducing and there are an increase of number already tells you that it's going well. From a stability point of view, and otherwise these guys will not reproduce. So that's wonderful news, and well done on the project. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of work behind the scenes, and the guys, the rhino are here safely, and it looks like they've settled, and it's absolutely a wonderful time for us in East Africa to be able to be in this position. That there are some positives, in the dark kind of recent years of rhino conservation, and well done with that, and thanks for your effort, and those of Grumeti Fund, and we wish you luck with the hard yards that you still have to cover, and we hope all of them will get through to the other side.
Yeah, we have absolutely no doubt. From now on out, it's all about the dedication of the security and monitoring teams, that of which we have no question. So, and I think it's, rhino being the flagship sort of iconic species that they are, there's many stakeholders involved in conservation within the greater Serengeti ecosystem, and I think rhino and the importance of protecting and conserving them, I think really has it really plays rhino conservation really plays a role in bringing all these stakeholders together. So we're just really glad and fortunate to be, a central part of that. So we look forward to working into the future with all the stakeholders that can contribute to rhino conservation in the greater Serengeti ecosystem in the future. So that's a really great thing.
Yeah, it's a team effort, and if you look at the Serengeti ecosystem, like you said, it's not fenced; it's open all around. It also has an international border in the north, so there are many kind of factors that makes it very hard to look after this ecosystem on a kind of a micro scale. But it seems that everything is in place, and the human resources are there. The teams are all working together, and sometimes it takes a project like this to galvanize different entities and get different guys to work together towards a common goal, and it seems that this project has managed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of resources available out there, in the light of the current situation with regards to rhino continent wide. So I think some real careful planning and thinking, and collectively the stakeholders within this ecosystem have a real good opportunity to harness a lot of support and the support that's available out there for rhino conservation, and I think that's going to really benefit us ecosystem wide long term. Rhino, some people would classify them as a sort of a keystone species as well. If we have the ability to protect rhino within the Serengeti ecosystem, it's the home of the great wildebeest migration. There's 1.3 million wildebeest that move around this ecosystem, and many thousands of elephants and other sort of iconic species, and through conservation efforts directly linked to black rhino, territorial integrity and community work and awareness and education, I think it's only going to bode well for the conservation of the entire ecosystem, not just a single species. So that's a really good positive from a project like this.
No, that's a key point you're making. It's kind of lays down a good foundation for conservation of the whole ecosystem and everything in it. You need to step up your game with regards to one endangered species, but that then filters through to many other areas and aspects, so that you have a healthy ecosystem throughout.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen how the northern Serengeti has been stabilized over the last 15 years, through various reasons, partly because of more tourism up there, and we're hoping that the western part of the Serengeti will follow suit. It's the cheapest way of looking after an ecosystem and habitat is just to have people visiting it, and we're hoping that black rhino will be one of those draw cards that will bring people to East Africa and into Tanzania, so that we can get more tourists to go to areas that were previously not visited, and that helps a great deal with income for the Parks Board and various authorities, and it also put people on the ground, on the roads every day, and in a way they do kind of anti-poaching on their own way.
Yeah, people presence within a protected area goes a long way to acting as a fairly strong deterrent factor. So
yeah, and tourism has many positive spin-offs to communities and job creation and in general kind of income for households and so, and then people don't have to consider other means, so just the job creation that I think tourism is bringing into remote parts of Africa, it's reason enough for people to choose the right way.
Yeah.
And we hope that the north has been stabilized, the west is getting there, so it's a good time for the ecosystem, and it's a good time for East Africa in general, I think. Grant Burden from Grumeti Fund, thank you for coming out all this way.
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Good luck with the next 30 years or so. and hopefully by then we will sit again and we can chat about a successful time in East Africa with regards to black rhino.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to that.
Thanks, Grant. And then with me I've got Ebenezer from Lamala Evanyan. Thank you very much for hosting us again. This is one of my favorite camps and one of my favorite areas in the Serengeti, the Serenero Valley, Makoma Hill. It's absolutely stunning game viewing. The work we've done in the last few days, we've bumped into so much. We had the Serenero Pride of Lion with the 3 big males and all the females and sub-adults and cubs made up for a pride that's almost 20 lions together. And so you're in a really good area. Just tell us a bit more about the camp and Lamala and why you guys have such a great operation.
Well, once again, welcome all to Lamala Ewanjani. As I said, our camp is located Makoma Hill. Between Makoma Hill and it's only 18 kilometers from the airstrip. Our camp, 12 room, 10 standard room and 2 family room.
Okay, so great for kids also to come along.
Yes. And we are in very good location. If you visit to our camp, you have a possibility of seeing cats, especially lion at night or during the daytime. Our camp before it was.
It's brand new, huh?
Yes,
We've got
it's
brand new
brand new.
tents. I think I've been neglecting Evanyan. It's been 2 years ago. It was still a great camp, but I see it's got a complete revamp and brand new tents, and things are looking sparkling and beautiful and well done. I think we should stay a little bit longer. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. You have to stay almost like 3 days to experience. If you are with us here, you can feel like you are in the middle of the bush. You can feel outside there's something walking outside, especially those lions who are walking or making sound during night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got one of the better views. The sun is setting over the hills towards the west here, but it's uninterrupted views. You don't see any other camps or lights. So it's great to be in the core area, the central area of the Serengeti, but still have a little bit of privacy because you're just around Makoma Hill. Overlooking kind of Rongai area and Rongai Hills. So it's really beautiful. But one of the best things that I've noticed, Ebenezer, is that you guys have completely got rid of plastic bottles and plastic altogether. In fact, you collect other people's plastic that come with the vehicles and you recycle all of that. So that is really awesome. So you've got water dispensers. There are glass bottles in the rooms for drinking water.
Yes.
So it's really great to see that you guys have made a complete commitment with regards to recycling and sustainability, and with having 12 tents and family tents, kids are welcome, but you never more than 30 people in camp, so it's quite exclusive, huh?
Yes. But actually, we have 12 room. For full, we accepted to have 30 people.
Okay. It's a nice number.
Yes,
You
it's
can
a
sit
nice
around the
number.
fire
Yeah.
and people have dinner, so it's not big at all. So it's a really nice exclusive experience. We visited some of your other properties. Lamala Evanyan is part of Lamala Camps and Lodges. We've just come from Kurio Hills, which is a high-end lodge in the northern Serengeti.
Yes.
You've got a brand new one in Nanyuki in the
Yes.
eastern central
Yes.
part of the Serengeti.
And we have another one in a new brand in Tarangire called Mpingo.
Mpingo Ridge in Tarangire, which
Yes.
is about 2 hours from Arusha as you come into the northern circuit. And then you have your camp that moves from Ndutu to the Mara River.
Yeah, we call Marandutu camp, which is normally follow the migration.
Okay.
from north to south, and also they move from south to north. And
Okay.
also we still have another one in the Ngorongoro crater rim,
Okay.
very close to Ngorongoro crater floor. It's
All right,
almost
yeah.
like 10 minutes if you stay in our camp in
And then you're down
Ngorongoro
on the
and
floor.
down on the floor. Yeah.
You know, you have a very nice location as in Ngorongoro, close to the eastern side of the rim. So it's also the non-crowded side. It seems that your locations are wonderful throughout the northern circuit. You know, we're going to go and visit Nanyuki on the eastern plains. So we are really looking forward to that. But Ebenezer, I really just want to thank you for looking after us. You always do it in true Lamala style with a lot of friendliness, and we really feel welcome here. And for us, it's a home away from home.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. You are most welcome. Anytime you are on Serengeti, you have to pass here, say hello to us.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Ebenezer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Carl from Serengeti Show. We joined by Grant Burden from Grumeti Fund. Thank you very much for your time, and he's updated us on the Rhino project that has been happening, and it's ongoing for the next 30 years, he promised me. And we had a chat to Ebenezer from Lamala Emanyan, part of Lamala Camps and Lodges. And we just want to say thanks to our sponsors that's making this possible. Arik Air that flew us in and out of the Serengeti, Blink Gadgetronics that's providing the internet for us, Serengeti Acacia Camps that has lovely camps throughout the Serengeti. Kidi Villa on arrival in Tanzania, it's a great place for your first and last overnights just outside of Arusha in a round of golf that Grant will come join us later on. And then Miracle Experience Balloon Safaris for a lovely balloon flight across the Serengeti Plains. Tanapa that has helped us a lot to do these broadcasts. And then Great Migration Camps that fill the accommodation gaps whenever we have nowhere to go. This Serengeti show main objective is conservation through tourism. So we want to entice people to visit more remote parks and reserves throughout Africa, and also to go to places that are not often visited. Your park fees and your presence in those remote areas are a big part of conservation. And like we've seen throughout the northern Serengeti, that conservation through tourism is the cheapest way of conservation. We will chat to you again next week, where we're going to broadcast from Arusha, where we will chat to Frankfurt Zoological Society. That's been a part of conservation in Serengeti for the last 70 years, and together with Tanzanian Parks. We will have a very nice discussion with the senior guys from the Parks Board and Frankfurt Zoological Society, and they will just give us a brief history of the conservation efforts throughout the Serengeti over the last 70 years. And before that, we need to thank Tetsi Fly for looking after the place. So we'll chat to you guys next week. Stay tuned. There will be updates on when the next episode will happen, and we'll chat to you soon. Keep well.
Thank you.